So although Mike Israetels' PhD getting absolutely dismantled was not on my bingo card, you best believe that I've got a lot to say about it. And my disclaimer before I get into this is that I like Mike Israetel. I believe he's one of the better people on the internet that you can be listening to when it comes to training, but he does have one big massive flaw, and we will be getting into that, believe me.
And so my IQ is above 160. We don't know how high because they don't do standardized IQ tests above that.
On the flip side of that, I also need to say that I hate the science-based lifters and whatever the fuck that even means. The ones that just hide behind data and studies and they don't actually give any opinions. They just say, oh well, this study says this, so that's what I believe. And they don't actually cite any of their own thoughts or evidence, and they just use other people's. And coupling that up with them overcomplicating what should be very simple concepts and using all the jargon to just make themselves sound so intelligent. And I think Mike is the opposite of that, and I feel like he obviously is very sciencey, but most of the time when he's giving out his information, he will dumb it down and put it across in a pretty relatable way to like a general audience. And he does obviously sometimes go overboard in the science, but I think that's few and far between, and he doesn't just like rely on data and studies, and he will tend to come with things with his own evidence. However, there's a bombshell video that's just been dropped and it's over an hour long, where somebody has went and dug up the paper that Mike written to get his PhD, like what actually made him Dr. Mike, that admittedly he does rely quite heavily on, and he's torn it to pieces and gave several reasons as to why it shouldn't have actually passed the whatever the gimpy university checks are to get a PhD. Now, I would never even have thought to go and look up the thesis that Mike had written to get his PhD, but as it turns out, the paper that he has written to grant him doctor status is that leaner, stronger, and more muscular athletes perform better in their sport. I will repeat that. Leaner, stronger, and more muscular athletes will perform better at their sport.
You don't say.
That is a groundbreaking theory that has granted someone doctor status. And in the paper, he discusses some groundbreaking concepts such as relative strength is more important and more beneficial than absolute strength, which basically means that if you take somebody at 60 kilos and somebody at 100 kilos and they're both lifting 100 kilos, then it's actually better for the person at 60 kilos because it's heavier in relation to their body weight.
What the fuck did I just hear?
Like, I know, it's just absolute mind-blowing stuff. So now that we've got the earth-shattering subject matter, I'm just going to give you the too long didn't read of why the guy Solomon Melson lays out that the PhD should not have actually been granted. So first of all, Mike's paper just basically clarifies previous information and findings, and it isn't original. What a PhD thesis should be is either adding or challenging to the existing literature, beliefs, etc. And Mike just basically spends a full paper just reciting information and findings that were already pretty well established. He apparently uses loads of just overcomplicated jargon to just kind of dress up these already existing understandings and principles. He pretty much bungled the data side of things, and he's got these tables showing all the different numbers and statistics and stuff, and he's used a whole bunch of wrong numbers and using the wrong means and stuff like that, and when you actually sit and like work it out, it results in people having negative ages and negative heights, and it's littered throughout all the different numeric tables.
1/3 of the lowest performers was either taller than 3.459 meters, taller than any human ever recorded, or shorter than -6.1 centimeters.
There was also contradictory numbers in there that hadn't been proof checked, and he makes a point that there was a relation between vertical jump height and sprint speed, and it was like the females' numbers that he used backed it up, but the males' numbers actually showed that there wasn't. He didn't properly demonstrate why the testing methods that he used with the athletes were viable for his studies, and when it comes to reciting the literature, apparently just totally misrepresented that. And it was littered, and I know that because he shows it in the video, with countless like formatting errors, grammatical errors, spelling errors. It literally just hadn't been like proofread in the slightest. And there was also a large section that had just been straight copy and pasted with the same errors in each time, and overall it just isn't a real great look. Now, see, to be honest, it's only geeks that are going to be bothered about all these things like the grammatical errors and the spelling errors and the formatting and the wrong numbers and all that type of thing. What we really want to know is what is the quality of his information like as it pertains to training. Like, that is why we all watch him. We're not bothered about how well he can write a paper. And I could understand if it was some like groundbreaking new theory and discovery that he had made, and at that point everything would have to be absolutely watertight with his references and his numbers and all the rest of it. For the subject matter we're talking about here, like, I don't think it's going to be going out on a limb and saying that he's got that one wrong. And I'd be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I was going to start slagging somebody for that, with my countless flipping spelling errors that I make and post and wrong grammar and
retard alert.
to most people I probably use the wrong words for a lot of training stuff. The biggest arguments I've probably ever had online are people like having a go at me because I've called a back off set a drop set or vice versa, and I don't know the difference between a pull up and a chin up because of what I call pull ups, and all that stuff just does not matter a fuck. But what the real problem is here is that this very simple and obvious point is what has given him a PhD and doctor status. And I'm not being funny, and I probably couldn't do it with as many statistics and reciting different literature and whatnot. But without ever having been to university a day in my life, I could write a paper and give you a pretty comprehensive, I would say, argument. There is no fucking argument to make as to why a leaner, stronger, more muscular athlete would perform better at their sport. And that's because I've been about it my whole life. I've lived it myself. I could give you countless examples of what I've been through, what my teammates have been through, what people have been around have been through and taught me.
Ooh, you're hard.
And also, I've just got the sense that God gave geese. And this isn't me bragging, because genuinely you could probably go down the pub tonight and you could go and find a wee guy sitting in the corner that could tell you, yeah, if you're leaner, stronger and more muscular, the likelihood is you're going to perform better at your sport. And this is precisely why you cannot hold people, whether it be Mike Israetel or somebody else, on a pedestal just because they can recite science, they can just quote studies left, right and centre, they can effectively just hold a lot of information in their brain, and they maybe have a few letters after their name, whether it be PhD, CBE, OYT, TIT.
Nobody cares, mate.
Nobody cares, mate. Nobody fucking cares, mate.
And that's why I'm critical of guys like Jeff Nippard, who's literally made a living by just stating the obvious, but doing it under the guise of, oh well, I read all these studies, so that means it must be true, and then just taking like very simple concepts, overcomplicating them, and using a whole big bunch of like jargon to like dress it up. And as for Mike's subpar and potentially dismissible dissertation, this does not change a thing about the quality of his information when it comes to training. If you watch him and stuff makes sense to you based on your knowledge and understanding of training, and more importantly, you implement the advice that he gives and you get success out of it, and maybe not in Mike's current case because I don't think he does any formal coaching, but if he did and he was getting success with people, then that is what should be generating trust in you. Just because it turns out Mike's PhD isn't all that doesn't mean that any help you've got from listening to him and the help you've got from applying the information he's given you doesn't count. Although I'm sure to some people they're going to be like, oh my god, his PhD is a sham, so that means that he's just wrong about everything now. So you can follow that logic, but that does make you a moron. To me it doesn't change anything, because I never started watching him because he had a PhD. It was because he gave out good information, and it just so happened he had a PhD as well. Now, where I have been critical of Mike in the past, and where I do think that he is like so far beyond reality, he's almost at the point of like mental illness, is his ability to analyze himself.
Undertanned the living crap out of me. I had a bunch of people come up, reach out, experts and stuff, and they're like, you're in pretty goddamn good shape. Top 3 kind of shape, but you can't come in with color like this.
From his own physique, to diet, to getting all the mental surgeries, to when he's helping people with coaching, and just like the overinflated ego he's got when it comes to his own intelligence. He is like so far beyond reality. It's insane. When I watch a Mike Israetel video and he's just giving general advice to general people watching, 90% of the time I'm like, yeah, that is pretty good. And admittedly, I don't watch him religiously, and there maybe is going to be some of the more extreme mental stuff in there that he comes out with that I've just maybe not heard. But having said that, have I ever sat and listened to Mike Israetel talk and been like, oh my god, and had this like coming to Jesus moment, because he's just like just enlightened me with just something that I could never even have fathomed before, and it's just like this whole new way of understanding training and a mind-blowing concept. Like, no. But overall, his advice is pretty good, and maybe he does say some more out there stuff, and because I don't watch him religiously, I've maybe missed it, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my god, his PhD isn't good, so that now means I'm never going to listen to him again. Like, no, I've listened to him before, and I agree with a lot of what he says, and if I watch him again, I'm going to either agree and disagree with him regardless of what his PhD status is. And this does give me a bit of validation, because I have banged on about, since I've been posting on social media, that see, the majority of degrees, they are not worth the paper that they are written on. And these whole science-based lifters, whatever that even means, by the way, because a lot of things you can actually class as like science-based lifting, because if you know it to be true, then it's pretty much science. But when it comes to being able to recite literature and just using studies and just trying to get all technical with it all, it's just all bullshit. And I'll tell you how bullshit it is, right? This whole like, oh, you need a degree to know what you're talking about, or it enhances your knowledge significantly. I remember getting in a semi-argument with a strength and conditioning coach who was not long out of university, who said that sumos are easier than conventional deadlift because it's a shorter range of motion.
Get the fuck out of here.
Just that, like no further, like, couldn't explain, just said, oh, short range of motion, so it must be easier. And when I said to him, well, how do you explain that all the top deadlifters in the world with their world records all deadlift conventional? He couldn't answer it, because it's just not what he'd been taught in his fucking classroom. And what a lot of these degrees get you to do is just simply memorize information. It doesn't like get you to like come up with your own concepts and principles and understanding, and most importantly, actual application of training. So the point I'm trying to get at with all this is don't, or really you can't, just turn on Mike because he wrote a shite paper, and that should just be totally inconsequential, and you should be listening to him based on the advice that he gives. Nothing more, nothing less. Could not give a flying fuck what sort of degree he's got. So I'll leave it there, and if I can work out how one of the bloops on the screen I will leave will be my previous video I made on Mike Israetel, just talking about how delusional he is when it comes to himself and his own training. And if I can't find it, just go on my channel and type in Mike Israetel is Carnage. Coaching inquiry form and Instagram and all that are down below, and I will leave it there. Catch you later.